Hi. Today I'm going to read you a book because it's so cold outside. Then I thought you could just stay in and hear my book. Okay, ready? This one's called Dragon Hiccups. One day, while Wally and Norval were playing, Norval made a strange sound and fire came out his nose. He had the dragon hiccups. Don't worry, buddy, said Wally. We can fix this. Norval stood on his head and he held his breath, but the hiccups wouldn't go away. Splash! Wally thought a drink of water might make the hiccups disappear, and he waved his magic stick and shouted, "Water!" But nothing happened. The magic words that day had to rhyme with bash. Splash, said Wally, and a splash of water landed on Norval's mouth. Norval kept hiccuping, so Wally took him to see Ogre Doug. "There's a cure," said Ogre Doug. He handed Wally a list and a beaker. You just have to find these 5 things and then put them in this beaker and mix them up and put a little drop on Norval's nose. First on the list was a thread from an ogre's pants. Doug was an ogre and he was wearing pants, so he plucked off a thread and dropped it into Wally's beaker. Next, they needed a potato from a giant. "I know where to get that," said Wally, and he and Norval headed to Gina Giant's house. On the way, Bob Goblin heard them, and he decided that he would scare Norval to make his hiccups go away. "Dandelions are scary," said Bob Goblin, and he picked up a handful and ran after Wally and Norval. Wally and Norval arrived at Gina Giant's house. "We need a giant potato," said Wally. "Do you have one?" "Of course I do," said Gina, and she gladly gave them a giant potato. Look at how big it is. Crash! The potato was so big it started to roll down the hill. Wally needed a magic word that rhymed with bash to make it stop. "Crash!" shouted Wally as he waved his stick. A wall popped up just in time for the potato to crash into it. But the potato started bouncing right toward Wally and Norval. "Wally Kazam! Wally Kazuto!" cried Wally. "Give me a word to stop this potato." His magic stick made the word mash appear. "Mash!" shouted Wally. With that, the giant potato turned into mashed potatoes. Splat! The mashed potatoes landed on Wally and Norval, and Wally put some in his beaker, and next on the list was a pinch of mud from a swamp. Look at all the potatoes. Suddenly, Bob Goblin popped out from behind a rock, and he waved a bunch of dandelions in front of Norval to scare the hiccups away. "Dandelions aren't scary," said Wally. "Come on, Norval." And they left Bob Goblin with all the mashed potatoes. Wally and Norval found the swamp, but Stan of the swamp wouldn't let them take any mud. "Mine," said Stan. Stan said he would give Wally and Norval some mud if they gave him something to eat. I only eat worms and succotash, said Stan. Succotash rhymes with bash. Succotash, said Wally, and he waved his magic stick and a plate full of succotash appeared. Stan dug in and let Wally take some mud. That's a funny word. Succotash. Next, Wally and Norval needed slime from the lightning snail. And they found the snail, but it was too fast to catch. Wally waved his magic stick. Dash! He shouted. Wally and Norval ran super fast, and they caught up to the lightning snail, and they got a blob of slime for their beaker. And they passed Bob Goblin, who was now trying to scare Norval with a pink teddy bear. Not scary, said Wally. The last thing on the list was a flower from the top of an ice volcano. Wally and Norval were flying to the top when the volcano began to erupt. Oh dear. We need something to protect us, cried Wally. The only thing he could think of that rhymed with bash was trash. And so he waved his stick and a trash can appeared. The lid made a perfect shield. Bob Goblin followed Wally and Norval to the top of the mountain. Wally and Norval reached the flower, but it was frozen. They needed to find a way to melt it. Just then, Bob Goblin popped up from behind an ice wall with a marshmallow. He thought the marshmallow would scare Norval. It didn't. But Norval hiccuped, "Fire!" and he unfroze the flower. Wally and Norval added the flour to the beaker and went back to the ogre Doug's house. The mixture was finally ready. Wally poured a drop on Norval's nose. It worked! Norval's hiccups disappeared. But just then, hiccup! Wally got them! Now they needed to find a cure for the troll hiccups. Ha 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 ha! That was a funny book. The end. I love you. Mwah.